Oh no, there's an earthquake. Oh my gosh. It's shaking. Actually, it's not. Hey, today we want to talk about earthquakes and what causes earthquakes. Or not what causes earthquakes, but what kind of damage do earthquakes cause. And so that's the focus of today's discussion. I've got some really amazing video clips that we're going to watch of some earthquake disasters and just talk about all the different varieties of hazards that happen in an earthquake. Well, as we do that, we've got a few things we want to address. The first thing I want to talk about is something called an isoseismal map. There's a big word, isoseismal. Everybody say isoseismal. All right, iso means the same. So the same seismal has to do with seismic activity or earthquakes. So the same level of earthquake damage. We've actually seen this map before. This is the Alaska earthquake of 1964. And essentially, if you are in the same region, let me change colors. I think it might make sense here. Let's change to a blue. If you see this line right here, I'm on the outside of it, but whatever, this line right here, they all have experienced the same level of earthquake. So this is an isoseismal map, and you're actually going to work on one of these in the activity in class. So that's an isoseismal map. All right, so the main things we want to talk today is about what are the direct hazards, what are the indirect hazards, and what are some personal safety issues that you would want to deal with in earthquakes. So what are the direct hazards? Okay. Well, the direct hazards are ground shaking. So if the ground shakes, it knocks things over, okay? If you're driving in a car and the ground shakes, then obviously you might have a car accident. So that's a direct hazard. If you're inside of a building and you have an earthquake, then it collapses. And of course, if you're in the building and it collapses on top of you, then you've got problems. So the collapse of buildings is very significant. So it's very important that you build the buildings well if you live in an earthquake zone. If you don't, they will collapse. Sadly, this situation happened in Haiti just weeks ago. About 15 days ago, I think I heard on the news this morning. It was like 15 days ago. They just pulled some little girl out of one of these collapsed buildings that they thought they didn't think anyone was alive. Also can break power lines, pipes, bridges, roads, etc. So this is a direct hazard that can happen. So let's take a look at a video clip that explains, it just illustrates the whole ground shaking phenomenon.
Much more similar to the Mexican fleet idea.
At 5:04 p.m., Latin American Studies 1 was underway at UC Santa Cruz.
And they have a candidate who's very strong and is fighting with us for second place.
With video cameras everywhere, this was the most visible earthquake ever.
So the Oakland A's take.
Hey, what, we're having an earthquake.
Well, that's amazing, isn't it? Here's an example of some collapsed buildings, and as the buildings collapse, you can see, of course, if you're trapped inside of this, then you have issues, don't you? You're not going to make it, sadly, or maybe you're trapped in a little airspace or something like that. Obviously, in the collapse of a building down in this picture, we have significant issues as well. I mean, all the shelves come off. It depends, of course, on the magnitude of the earthquake and actually the intensity where you happen to be living. Obviously, also broken power lines. So if you've got power lines and they break, like down here, obviously that's going to create some issues. Bridges can collapse. Okay, roads can deform, so if you're driving and if you're maybe on a bridge and it collapses, of course, that would be a problem. Yeah, okay. Now, there are also indirect hazards, things that don't happen as a result of the tsunami or of the earthquake, but are something that happens after the fact. For example, fire. Usually in most cities there are pipelines filled with like natural gas. Well, if they break and burst, they can catch on fire. You can also have landslides. Remember, you're moving the earth. And then kind of an interesting one, a wild one, is the concept of a tsunami. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. In fact, let's watch some video footage about some earthquake damage in Kobe, Japan. So as we look at Kobe, Japan, we're going to see some just amazing things that happened there.
this morning at first light, it was impossible to detect the trauma which has hit the city of Kobe, once renowned for its style and its beauty. Now, down in the city centre, there's still a sense of disbelief as people wander around gazing at the devastation, even now not really able to absorb its scale or the size of the reconstruction job ahead. On the surface, people seem calm, perhaps in shock, but hazards are everywhere. Fires are proving the most immediate. This was one of 90 caused by gas explosions, fueled by dry debris and whipped up by icy winds. Astonishingly, for this sophisticated nation, we didn't see a single fireman equipped with breathing apparatus. The men were left with just the protection of fireproof scarves. It's also hard to fathom why, here in one of the most developed parts of the world, firemen are slowed down because the water supply's been cut off, and they have to pump up supplies from the rivers below. The injured are still being brought to hospital, many with critical wounds. Inside, the scene is reminiscent of a Third World War zone. The wards are desperately overstretched. There are nothing like enough beds to go round. This is the Higashi Kobe Hospital. It's only midday and already 600 new patients have arrived.
Wow, pretty amazing, wasn't that? Wow, okay. Fire, obviously we can see some fire, which they talked about in the video clip, that you have fires to fight. I think this is from the 1906 earthquake in San Francisco, and it set the place on fire. If you don't have enough water, then you can't set the fire, put the fires out. Landslides, here's an example from an earthquake. All of this dirt used to be up here, and of course that created some big issues. You can get lots of landslides. And then the one that just is kind of fascinated me is a tsunami. What in the world is a tsunami? Well, tsunami is basically a tidal wave, sometimes it's called. It's a wave from the ocean that hits the land and basically overturns it. Normally you get regular waves, but in this tidal wave you get this huge wave that comes over the top. And it's caused by underwater earthquakes. So if there's an earthquake underwater, you can create a tsunami. And the bigger the earthquake, the worse it is. All right. Oftentimes, if you live in a place, usually very low in terms of the sea, you're right on the edge of the beach, if you will, you're going to have a tsunami evacuation route, meaning get to high ground. If you're sitting here, here's kind of a cool picture. If you're standing here on the beach having a nice, wonderful day, and you see all of the water go out, you need to run as fast as you flippin' can and get to high ground, because you are about to experience this down here, and that would be bad. And